So, welcome back to another Concept Pending podcast here, Heroes and Villains podcast. We have a special guest with us today, virtual, unfortunately, but nonetheless, a very, very special man here with us. The Blaine has joined us today. He's an awesome dude, producer, content creator. He's all over podcasts. You guys know him. You love him. He's been to several of our conventions in the past. Super hype guy, and we're super happy to have you, Blaine.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. I was like, you guys were talking to me earlier about like how far back we go, and I feel like it might have been like Star Wars Celebration 2018 is when I first heard from Jonathan. You guys had me out, so
is that the one that we had the like portraits?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah. Crazy one, to be honest.
That was bananas. Yeah.
That was like, I think my first time in Chicago as well. And, like Celebration is like the mecca of, Star Wars nerds outside of like Lucasfilm. And it was such a blast. We were in the middle of a big shoot at the time. It was like a 2-month long shoot. And I was like, I'm so sorry, guys. I have to dip for like a week because this brand is like paying me to come out to do Star Wars stuff. I was like, I cannot miss this. And I made awesome connections with you guys, and it's been 6 years since. So
yeah, we got to get you back out for sure.
Obviously,
unfortunately, Japan is going to be a struggle for us. I don't know if that's going to play out, the celebration being in Japan, but we did go to London.
Yeah, awesome.
London celebration was crazy. Minus the fact that we had some hiccups with our POS machines, it was like so fun getting to meet fans over there. Like completely unexpected that so many people actually knew who we were already.
We literally had to input every single transaction manually. Like had to input every single credit card manually at that show.
That is a nightmare.
It was like record-selling show for us as well, if that puts it into perspective.
Yeah, it was a show
before.
I mean, and I've been with you guys. We've done, I think, 1 or 2 celebrations. No, we've done 2 celebrations. I think I was out with you guys in Anaheim, and then I also did New York Comic Con with y'all. And it's like as soon as the convention doors open and they let folks in, general admission and whatnot, you guys are absolutely flooded. And it's just like people. I remember walking around the floor, people wearing your backpacks and your merch and stuff like that. So I can only imagine probably what might have been like thousands of transactions, just typing it all in. Miserable.
It's funny because you're in a different country as well. And so like every credit card is different. And so like I'm trying to mentally process how to like manually type all of this in while I have like hundreds of people waiting in line. And I'm just like, okay, guys, I got it. I promise.
Yeah, I remember I was in a convention in Australia, and this was when we were transitioning over from like swiping your credit card to chip, and chip had not caught on in the States yet. So when I got into a gas station to get something, they were like looking at me like I was a caveman because I was swiping my card. So it's like I was like, I didn't know you guys had like different pay out here in another country, but
yeah, it's all a learning curve when you travel. I'm sure Japan would be a mess.
It's
for us,
crazy for sure.
But yeah, man. So for those of the folks listening, I mean, you have a pretty awesome background in what you did with Rooster Teeth there in Austin. Yeah. You want to give us just a brief flyby overview?
Absolutely. So I was with Rooster Teeth for 10 years, and I don't know if you guys heard this, they shut down. They're no more. They're dead. But that's okay. A lot of the brands that you knew and love at Rooster Teeth are continuing on strong, either by their original creators. We got to reacquire our IP, or other companies have come in and swooped them up. I know that Ruby, they announced recently, got picked up. I want to say Viz Media. I'm not sure. You might want to fact check me on that. But yeah, no, I was a writer director out there, and then did some on-screen talent stuff and a lot of podcasting. And it was a great time. It was a dream come true. I was a huge fan of like Red versus Blue and all that nerdy stuff. RTX was like my first convention, and I went through like 3 stages where I was like at an RTX as an attendee, and then the next year I volunteered as like a personal assistant, and then the year following I was an actual like employee of Rooster Teeth. And yeah, it was like a crazy time in my life. I'll always look back at my Rooster Teeth years in awe at all the stuff that we got to do and all the fun stuff. But yeah, so and then to catch you guys up, since since Rooster Teeth went down, we've been doing a Dungeons and Dragons podcast called Tales from the Sneaky Dragon, and
it's amazing.
Going phenomenally. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. We have a lot of fun content out on like TikTok and Instagram where we like do puppet videos and animations, and they're all clips from our show. And one of the things that we like to emphasize is that it's kind of a fun for all ages thing. It's not like made for kids. It's kind of like at a SpongeBob / Adventure Time level of maturity where it appeals to everybody. But we get a lot of messages from like parents who are like, I love listening to this with my kids. And I think that's super rad because I got some nieces and nephews who also tune in, and I think that's pretty fun. So that's what I'm doing right now is just, I'm kind of like back to like lockdown mode. I'm working from home and we're just podcasting, just doing what we're doing right here.
That's awesome. Yeah. The Stinky Dragon is hilarious.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the videos that you guys do are just so cute. Like, I love the style that you guys have gone with. I'm actually obsessed with it. I imagine it takes a very long time to actually get that type of content done, though.
It is a huge labor of love, but I really enjoy doing it. For background, if you haven't seen our videos, listeners at home, we basically have these like felt puppets, and they're not even puppets. They're kind of more like dolls. But long story short, 2 of the guys that work on our show are brothers, John and Micah, and their mom listened to our content, and she's a seamstress and she loves sewing and stuff like that. So she started making these little felt dolls and sent us all of them as gifts. And we were like, these are incredible. We should like use these. So we went back and we found like a funny clip, and then we'd, basically like rudimentary puppet / animation and make videos out of it. And we had so much fun with it. And then we ended up turning it into like my buddy Chris and I made a full length show out of it. We did like 8-10 minute episodes called Stinky Dragon Adventures. And yeah, man, it's really cool. I think we want to get back to that someday. I think we have to kind of build our Patreon and stuff, but it is a lot of fun making those puppet videos because we have all film backgrounds and stuff like that. So when you're working on something that's like a 10th of the scale, you have to really think outside of the box. But it's a great time.
Yeah, I always loved that type of like animation from back in the day. So I saw that it really resonated super quick with me.
I was obsessed. Like when I was a kid, my dad, I'm pretty old. So when I was a kid, it was like a long time ago, but, the old VHS camcorders, like the big giant ones, my dad had one, and I would spend hours with like, whether it was like a G.I. Joe or like Legos and like, the stop animation, like moving around and like little signs popping up and stuff. And that's kind of the feeling I get when I watch those clips that you guys are making. It's like, obviously on a much higher level than Doug as a kid, but the same sort of like tedious but so rewarding task,
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. I did the exact same thing. In fact, one of the last times I was at my parents' house, I picked up my old VHS camcorder because we had this big, I don't even know what brand it is. Like I could go into the closet and go grab it, but I did the same thing. I remember I made a whole like feature-length movie about my Ash from Evil Dead / Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
And it was like he was like fighting, my sister's Barbies and stuff like that. And I had Castle Grayskull as like one of the sets, my He-Man set. And my buddy Chris, he also made movies with his little toys and his G.I. Joes. So it's funny how cyclical, all that stuff comes back, and it's like, here I am, a 34-year-old man, just like awesome. Still playing with dolls.
Yeah, so, it's awesome.
And we also have Gus is on there, and he was a big part of Red versus Blue, and he'll come in and he'll work on the show as well. And he constantly comments, he's like, this just reminds me of old RVB days, because it's, it's very similar. It's like they had little machinima like Halo guys bobbing their heads up and down. And it was also like not just a return to our roots for me and Chris, but also as a company. It was just like going back to like what made Rooster Teeth popular and fun.
Yeah. Like not too overly refined and just kind of that authentic vibe.
Scrappy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The red versus blue thing is always funny to me. Anytime I still see it at the shows, it's just like everlasting, you know?
It was groundbreaking.
Yeah, I saw it at TwitchCon this past year, and it was just so funny to me to like see it in person. I absolutely love
it. It's crazy because, you know, like that's been around. It's like this evergreen IP that like I feel like the whole internet knows about red versus blue. And I just remember being in like middle school or grade school and discovering it and just being like, man, these guys are crazy. Like, what are they all about? And, you know, years later be working with them. And I mean, like working with like Bernie and Jeff and Gus, like it sometimes still kind of hits me. It's like, these guys were like internet legends, you know? So to be, you know, farting around with Gus on a D&D podcast is still like mind blowing to me.
It's awesome, man. So you guys are running a campaign on that podcast?
Yeah, we're currently in campaign 2 of our Dungeons and Dragons show. This one's called Grotesque, and it's kind of set in like a monster universe. So it's like, you know, like Frankensteins and vampires and stuff like that. That's fixing to wrap up with episode 5. And then that kind of, you know, timeline wise, we took a little bit of a hiatus as we were launching our Patreon and kind of building our own personal, like small business. And we're about to launch our campaign 3, which is going to be, we haven't really revealed any plot details and stuff, but it's, you know, very exciting. Dungeons and Dragons, like I never anticipated being a D&D guy, you know, like I only started getting into it at Rooster Teeth. And I was very, you know, I new to it. I didn't know, you know, how it worked. And now I can't really imagine my life without D&D. It's just so much fun. Just the you know, the gaming and the role play and all that stuff and the voices and things, like it's a really good time. You guys do D&D at all? I mean, I know you make the content or for the shirts and you got the IP and stuff. Y'all?
No. I have done quite a bit of D&D. I am technically more of a Magic the Gathering nerd, though.
Oh, cool. Do you still collect the cards and all that stuff?
I do. I like got out of it for a little bit, and then recently, I don't know, I just felt inspired to start playing Magic again, so I got all the people that do the shows with us to also buy Magic decks, so that we could, like, I could force them to play with me.
Yeah.
And so now it's like a requirement of every show. Like, if you're coming to the event, you have to bring your Magic deck and, like, bring it to the show, because if there's downtime, you're playing.
Like,
we're playing Magic.
Like a tear down at the end of the show, everybody will just be huddled around playing Magic, and the show.
Doug's like, I'm ready to get out of here and drink a beer. We're like, wait, oh no, I have like 15 more turns and then I win. And he's like, I just am done with it.
Can we go, guys? I watched the cartoon as a kid, the D&D adventures, and was always intrigued by the illustrations and the books. But I didn't have like a community of kids playing D&D. I mean, we were in grade, you know, we were riding our bikes and running around in the woods. Like that's pretty much all we did. But all that being said, you haven't met Greg Holken, who's on our team, who is like hardcore dungeon master dude.
Nice.
Yeah, he's just an encyclopedia of information. He knows every little intricacy. He writes all his campaigns. He makes his maps. Like this dude is like full on Dragon Master dude or Dungeon Master.
You're gonna have to edit Dragon Master.
Yeah, I'll take that Dragon.
That's awesome. Yeah, we kind of have an interesting system with Stinky Dragon where it's not super traditional D&D where we kind of have like a dungeon master behind the screen. It's Micah, who I mentioned earlier, and he writes, you know, all of our characters and the story and all that stuff. He's an incredible writer. And then he and Gus are kind of like the DM together. So Gus is like the forward facing, like he's the one that you hear in the podcast. And then we play it and stuff like that. But something that we do that's a little bit different is, typically your dungeon master is doing all of your NPC character voices and all that stuff. I don't think he'll be upset if I said this. Gus is a terrible actor. Like you can hear that when he plays Simmons in Red versus Blue. He's just so flat, and I love the dude to death, and he's so funny. So then we started doing kind of like a radio play approach where we'll have friends from all over the internet come in and do guest voices, and then Micah will go in with this extra level of polish, and he'll like compose music and add sound effects. So the whole thing's like this like radio play. So it's a lot of fun, but those guys are huge D&D nerds. Like Gus has been playing it for decades. So we're in very good hands with Gus.
If you ever need a cameo voice, we would love to get Doug in there in like a super played up Southern accent. So like if you ever feel the need for that, you should have said,
I absolutely will. And merchandise too.
We'll have to have you back on when Greg is on though, for sure. Cause I feel like you guys
would nerd out big time.
You guys could talk about so much D&D stuff.
Yeah. Well, I clicked in on a couple of you guys' things, and like one of them you guys were talking about like Star Wars and Acolyte and stuff like that in MCU. So a lot to say about those. I mean, there's like, it is crazy just how much content there is out there right now. It's insane. It's just like it's like a job to keep up with. It's a lot.
Truly.
Well, and I mean, I hate saying it, but it kind of devalues it because there's so much. I haven't fully consumed this, and now you're throwing something else at me, and I've got to catch up with that. And do I go back, or do I have time because there's more coming? And so I've kind of struggled with a lot of that, especially like with the Star Wars releases. There was a lot of things that bothered me, like Boba Fett. Like Boba Fett was one of my favorite characters of all time, right? Yeah. Now we have a definitive story of Boba Fett, and I think the allure was not knowing. Like
he's a mystery man. Yeah, you didn't know who was behind the mask.
He's just this ultimate badass that has no, like, you can only imagine his story and where he's going and where he's come from, and to put like a stamp on that and make it definitive just like really kind of hurt. But I mean, there's so much good stuff that they're doing, and they also have to like connect these storylines, and so I feel like that's a lot of what we're getting there is like making the connections and bringing in more backstory and future opportunities, to build on. So
I hear you on the Boba Fett thing. That almost felt reactionary because they saw how successful Mandalorian was. And I feel like Mandalorian was like our generation's Boba Fett, where he was just this man of mystery. But I don't think they anticipated it popping off as much as it did. So then they were like, well, what other Mando content can we do? And I kind of agree. Like, I think the execution of Boba Fett was a little lackluster, and it was frustrating because, I think I have a Boba Fett action figure hanging on my wall somewhere. One of my favorites, So to define who that character is, it does kind of take off some of the fun allure to him. That being said, though, I don't know if you guys have checked out Andor, but like, I think some of the best Star Wars content is like still getting released. Like
100%.
We're in a really good like period of time with Star Wars stuff.
1,000%. Andor, like there was 2 episodes, I think, in there that was some of the best Star Wars I've seen in years.
No, that's my favorite
like
series.
Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it also feels too like, I think that Disney learned their lesson a little bit with the rate at which they were releasing stuff with like Marvel. For a while there's like, we were inundated by MCU stuff, new shows every month and new movies like every quarter and stuff. And it really does feel like they've pulled back and they're kind of realizing like, maybe we shouldn't go as strong. So I'm hoping that they're kind of reacting to that like overload that they gave us, and they're going to kind of like pull it back a little.
Yeah, I think everyone wants things that feel a little more thought out. instead of like the constant spam of content. So everyone we've been talking to as well is very happy with them slowing down a bit.
Yeah. They need to slow down. I mean, I think the story, if I remember correctly, was that before they launched The Mandalorian, they were talking about doing a side shoot of Boba Fett initially, and then they came up with this The Mandalorian thing, and it just went bonkers. And it's fabulous. I mean, I love that. I like how that intertwined with Boba Fett as well. I just don't like there being a definitive story to Boba Fett.
As much as I love Tamora Morrison and stuff like that, it is like kind of weird seeing him scattered, throughout the universe and stuff. Especially when, like, I don't know if you guys ever dipped into Clone Wars at all, and in like the subsequent like Bad Batch series.
Yes.
It's so good, and animation is such a great, kind of delivery for that sort of storytelling. So when it kind of falls short on a live action side, you're like, it's a little bit of a bummer, but
yeah, because I think the biggest thing there is like with animation and comics and things of that nature, like there's a element of imagination still, like you still have a little bit of fantasy and imagination there, but when it's live action and it's like, this is exactly what he said and this is how it happened, you're like, oh man, like, like who tell me you didn't want Boba Fett to just cut loose and start murdering people at the end of that series. Like, the whole time he's like, oh, no. Like, come on, dude. Let's just...
He was like a man of the people, and he was like this, like, mayor of Tatooine or Mos Eisley. It was strange. You know what I really would love for Disney to do is kind of like what Marvel started dipping into and just like letting more creators come in and do things in their own voice. So like, like Taika Waititi coming in and doing a more comedic approach to like a movie, or like maybe a more like, they kind of did this with Andor, but like a more grounded, like, I want to see like Star Wars version of Predator, right. like a rated R Star Wars.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I always, I want to do like because I direct and stuff like that. My goal would be to like make a Dash Rendar movie, just like a dumb, like John Cena, like, knockoff of Han Solo. And he's just the most violent, vile stuff you could see in the Star Wars universe.
Cutting people in half.
I think we're both down to help with funding on that film if you want to stay working
let's
on
go
this for it.
Let's do that.
That would be funny, though. We do have first Marvel rated R coming out. So, I mean, if we could get Star Wars, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I forgot about Deadpool and Wolverine. The marketing on that, I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of the mind that like, once I see like one trailer, I know I'm going to watch it. So I kind of turn everything off. And it's hard because they're like blasting that stuff right now. And I don't want to spoil too much. I'm pretty stoked about that one though.
I agree. I don't like, especially when it's like one like that, where, there's a ton of punchlines and like, I don't want all the punchlines.
Yeah, out of context.
Yeah, before I get there. Like, so yeah, I've been trying to avoid all of the additional trailers that have been flooding us. But it looks awesome. I'm stoked about it.
Yeah, I mean, just an X-Men, version in an MCU, I think is going to be. Did you guys watch X-Men 97 at all? The Disney Plus?
Yeah,
that was kick-ass. My buddy AJ actually does the voice of Gambit, and he has just been like going crazy over the success of that show. I think you guys might have sent him some merch because he was posting pictures of heroes and villains, Gambit stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we did. Yeah. Did you see the stuff that we did last year for X-Men? The New York
Xavier.
We did that whole like Xavier build out where we kind of styled it after.
It was like Professor X's
Professor X's space.
Library type of like the booth was.
It was more like scholarly kind of like school uniform type.
Yeah, it's all like collegiate. Do we have a sample over there at all?
That's sick. I see that you guys get the Wolverine.
Yeah, this is from it. Yeah.
That was one of them. Yeah. Yeah, there's the starter. Well, we had like the Letterman and like, it was cool. And it felt very like collegiate. And we had like the framed, printouts of like Storm and Rogue and Wolverine and like the alumni, you know, all up on the walls. It was legit. It was fun.
Well, I don't need to kiss you guys' butts because you guys have already had me out for a bunch of conventions and I'm on the podcast now, but I do have to commend y'all for like how you guys approach nerdy merchandise, because it's all very like subtly geeky, you know, like it's like good clothing like that you can just wear, you know, in kind of any situation, but it's like the people that know and they can see it and they're like, oh, that's an X-Men shirt, or that's like a very subtle, like that's an Ahsoka sweater because of the color pattern, the color blocking and stuff. So you guys kill it. It's not just like graphic tees all the time, you know?
Yeah, we appreciate that. Yeah, that's like the main, like you nailed it. I mean, it needs to be wearable. It needs to be everyday, you know, things that people can wear every day. And it's not just like something ridiculous, you know, and childish and style guide looking. Yeah. And, so yeah,
I think that's our goal. With some of the stuff that we've been doing recently, we've been toning it down even further and really focusing on like the materials we're using and just like making them more wearable overall. And it just keeps connecting more and more, you know?
Yeah, it's
like over time, we've slowly gotten closer and closer to that wearability.
Yeah.
That we want.
Yeah. I mean, it's a struggle because like, within the licensed merch world, the expectations are not like what we expect, you know, of our merch. Yeah. The market as a whole has basically laid a foundation of garbage. And so then like,
it's true.
Then like the expectations are that like licensed merch is like garbage quality apparel. And so it doesn't have to be like that. That's you know, it's not set in stone. Like, let's change that. But it's a difficult, you know, barrier to break, not only with like I mean, the audience appreciates it, but breaking through that barrier with like, even like suppliers, right? Like, working with vendors and the fabrications and the quality that we expect is a hard thing to get to because their base knowledge is just like mass production of you know, cheapo
crap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and it also, in my opinion, it's just sustainable product because it lasts and it's quality and you're going to continue wearing it. Whereas a lot of like, you know, merch, licensed merch is just, it just falls apart, doesn't last, you know, always. So, yeah.
Well, sometimes I'll just see, you know, stuff that they have on like, you know, major retailers and it'll be like a bunch of graphic tees. And I just kind of see just like landfill. And I'm like, well, that's going to be like 3 uses and then it's out. But no, you guys got good stuff. And it's funny too, because I mentioned it's like you can just wear it in any situation and it's like subtly you're representing your fandom. I went to an Iron Maiden concert in Austin, and I'm not one to wear like black shirts all the time. Like I kind of do like, you know, do a range of colors and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I don't know what to wear. And I remember you guys had sent me out like a He-Man pack. You guys had a bunch of He-Man shirts, and there was this Skeletor Snake Mountain. Like it was like a tour shirt, and it was just Skeletor's face. And I was like, I gotta wear that. So I hate to say this, but I tore the sleeves off and just made it a sleeveless shirt. And I just went to an Iron Maiden shirt in my Skeletor He-Man shirt.
The Skeletor shirt, that's perfect.
If you hadn't have chopped the sleeves off for that show, I think we would have been disappointed, to be honest. Like you have to fully commit.
And that was a sick show, dude. I mean, like Iron Maiden still got it, man. They're all old dudes, and they're just still they rip. It's so cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah. So what conventions you guys got coming up? You said kind of Tokyo's in flux right now, but is there anything else set in stone?
Yeah, I mean, in stone is San Diego and New York at the moment. And then I guess you've got some others.
Yeah, I've got some of my own shows happening outside of HV. But for San Diego, we're doing, I don't know if you saw the Pod Racer collection that we posted. It's like all these super intricate moto jackets that Doug and the team did, and like the entire aesthetic of it is so amazing. I'm like so excited for the San Diego because we have the collection as well as some of our friends from the 501st coming out to kind of like help make the space feel a little more in world and distressed, and like
they're gonna like
props and stuff.
Yeah, they're gonna build up on our display like little greeblies and stuff and pimp it out. Like, so the idea is that it's gonna be like a Star Wars garage or like a pit crew type thing. And it's the 25th anniversary of episode 1. So episode 1, pod race, like most iconic moment in that film. And with the big, like the race trend, you know, we built the pod race piece, and then we're like, well, we can't just do the pod race. Like, we've got to do more. We got to expand on this idea. So we just did the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter, both in like this garage moto race vibe. Whereas like the pod race one is more like Formula One vibe. Yeah, like more like sponsor logos and stuff like that. And the TIE Fighter and X-Wing is more like a moto idea. But it's gonna look sick. We've got big plans for New York.
We have really big plans for New York, actually. Probably our most immersive booth that we've done so far. Still a little bit under wraps, but like we're beyond stoked for this.
Yeah. After the success of the Xavier thing, it's kind of like we've kind of taken that approach to our shows more so than like just slinging merch. We want it to be experiential, like brand building experience, so that like the con goer remembers it, right? Like a lot of times you just show up, you buy a t-shirt, you don't even know who the hell you bought that t-shirt from. You just thought it was cool. But if you go and you actually have an experience at a place, like you're going to remember that. So that's our focus is kind of evolved into like, what can we do to make it an experience versus just slinging merch, you know?
Yeah. No, you guys always done a great job of like, you know, that set deck and stuff like that. Cause that's like a big thing is like people want to brag about going to conventions and like they want to take photos. And so when you have these destinations where it's like everything's super rad looking, you know, you have people stick around and kind of gravitate towards your booth. So
last year was our first year of kind of building a more immersive booth like that and not just focusing on selling product. And it brought in a lot of people who may or may not have resonated with the brand or with X-Men, you know? And so I think that was a big thing for us as well, is like, even if they don't know who we are, it always helps bring new people in.
Well, and it also kind of made waves just across the con. Like we had like all the folks from Marvel like freaking out, right? Like they're all coming over like, holy crap, this is amazing. And interviews and like, you know, booth tours and stuff like that. Like you don't get that with just a grid wall and merch slapped up there, right? Like and so that's where our head's at now. And maybe, you know, sometimes I get a little too carried away with some of the ideas, but that's why I got Jonathan to kind of dial me in and be like, keep your lines. But
you know, it's bad if I'm the one that's having to keep him in line.
Well, I mean, you guys have, you know, I've been out a couple of times and you also do a good job of like engaging with y'all's community. And like, I've never really heard of a merchandise brand that's been as like connected and like interactive with their folks. So like you guys are always doing giveaways and like, you participating in like a lot of like the pins, the collectible pins. And I remember that was like a big thing with Celebration. So
that's a big focus, man, is personalizing the brand, I guess, or humanizing it so that, so that our fans know who we are. And like we can have a conversation. We can talk about, your ideas and maybe those ideas will be implemented or whatever. But like, we have relationships with those folks that show up every year. I mean, we know them. And that's a big part of it because then they trust us. They feel comfortable. Like, and that's a huge part of building the brand. If we were just like this cold brand, like blocked off, like none of us go, we hire a staff and we send them and they don't know shit about the brand and they just sell our merch, then, what is that? Like, it's not gonna build any relationships. So, and you're part of that, dude. Like, you were a major part of that in the beginning, like, because you're very personable, you're very quick, you're very witted, and I think you fit the brand well with all the things that you're into and all the knowledge that you have about the properties and the IP that we work on. So I, going into it in the beginning, we were like, we need a dude, like we need a guy, like, and you were that guy. So we really appreciate what you did for us there, and we look forward to doing some more of that, man. We gotta get it going again. I know you're busy, but
no, I love collaborating with you guys, and I always speak praises about you guys. And I even remember like during the pandemic, like you guys hit me up and you guys do a very good job, not just with your booths, but like with your merchandise photography and stuff like that. Like I always see on your stuff, Jonathan, like you and Hillary are building sets and doing all these elaborate things. And at one point you hired me and my photography buddy, and we went out to like some dunes out here in Texas and did like this whole Tatooine thing. And that like looked awesome. And it was a cool experience for me. It got me out of my house after being in lockdown for months and months and months. So no, I love working with you guys. It's always been a fun time. And it's easy to work with you guys too, because you have such good like aesthetics and the looks. It's like a brand that I like to represent because everything's just good. It looks good. So yeah, digital hugs.
Appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate you. Fart hoofer. Wait, what?
The fart hoofer. God, that was like a callback, bro.
Got him.
Where'd that come from?
That was like the one note I had in my mind to ask Blaine about.
Yeah, the long and short of it is when I was an intern at Rooster Teeth, they had this thing, Nintendo DS street passing. And so you would like, go within a certain distance of someone else's Nintendo DS, and then their avatar would pop up, their me, and they'd be like, "Oh, I passed you, Bernie." And, whatever. And in secrecy, I bought a DS and made this horrifying looking creature called Farthoofer and just like plagued the company for like a month, and no one could figure out who had it. And I honestly think that got me hired at Rooster Teeth. It was weird. It was the stupidest prank, but it got me the job. So
that's an inspiring thing. Honestly, I would have hired you as well.
It's a funny story, man. It's like the random intern is like fart hoof bombing everybody.
It got elaborate. Like we were doing a shoot downtown at the time, so I was doing it up at the studios, and then I was also still going to UT at the time, so I was giving it to my boss, my producer Patrick, and I was like, just take this DS with you, don't tell anybody you have it. And so then when they were going down and like it was like a whodunit, like, okay, who has been at these places when Farthoofer has been there, And they ruled me out because it was like, well, Blaine, it couldn't be Blaine because he wasn't there. And I was like, yeah, you idiots. I was like planting him under bathroom sinks so that he like it, and I'd leave him overnight and no one, it was just like, yeah,
brilliant.
I was a little troll. Good times.
See, I told you, Fart Hooper is a great story. So what, and we'll make it quick and be done, but, favorite convention experiences,
God, it was such a whirlwind, but I think that first time you guys had me out for Celebration out in Chicago, that was my first time being in Chicago, and that was my first time at a Celebration, and it was just such a wild time. Like the amount of cosplayers, not just like cosplayers, like, you know, the 501st are out there, you talked about them. Those guys are all amazing. But you have these like really niche cosplayers that only like real nerds can recognize, and you're just blown away by like how impactful the Star Wars franchise is on its audience, and like, you know, the weird people that you know, characters that people will connect with. So yeah, man, Star Wars Celebration is like S tier in my eyes. That stuff is so rad. I hope Japan works out for you guys, because like I love Japan, and that's gonna be wild, because I can only imagine how hard they're gonna go out there.
I know, that's why we're so excited about it.
It would be amazing.
After the reception in London, it's just like, I feel like if we played into the location with the collection, it would just be so cute.
Oh, especially with the samurai inspiration and all of Star Wars, like there's just so much stuff to do. It's fertile ground. So
I think that's always one of the parts about the convention that's kind of like, I don't know that overwhelming is necessarily the best word, but I guess when you see how big the community is, and you feel like you're this little thing that doesn't have anyone to interact with about things, and then you go to, whether it's a Star Wars convention or an anime convention, and you see people in these random obscure cosplays like resonating with that character that you love or that show that you love, it's like, that is always the best part to me. Going to them is just like making those people feel seen, and feeling like they're a part of it with us.
Yeah, so we did San Diego last year. The theme was like summer camp theme, and so we did like all the different like planets. Well, not all of them, but like locations from the original Star Wars trilogy, and like you had gone around and collected these patches or whatever. But ultimately, I was like, this whole thing, like San Diego Comic-Con is adult nerd summer camp. It's like, it's like the opportunity for everybody to get out, cut loose, and really celebrate, you know, the things they love. Which, I mean, you can do that on a day-to-day, but not in that, you know, that space and at that volume. So it's always fun. But yeah, Star Wars Celebration is definitely my favorite to attend. It's amazing.
It's always my favorite.
Yeah. All right, dude.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Appreciate it. It's good catching up with y'all.
Yeah, it's good to see you, man. And we'll be in touch. Anyway, all right, dude. We'll let you go. We appreciate you. And we will definitely be in touch. All right. Well, that wraps it up for another Concept Pending podcast, heroesandvillains.com. Check out our merch and be sure to follow us on social at Heroes Villains Brand. Thanks to Blaine. Thanks to Jonathan. We'll talk to you next time.